You are muted. If you can unmute yourself, you can, if you hear us.
Hello. Hello.
Atari, my brother, how are you?
Fine, fine, my brother. How are you? We are fine here. We are fine. How is it, Tangaza?
To listen to you. Me? Can you speak, please, so that we can see if
Hello.
Dr. Evaristi, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you very well, Father.
Okay, good. So we are going to put on the slides and then see if you can see the slides on your side.
I see it very well.
For this collaboration under the VEREAD, the Virtual Exchange Religious Exchange Africa and Europe. And today we are going to, our topic is the socio-cultural dimensions of African religion. This will be given by Dr. Evaristi Magoti, who is a specialist in African religion, and he is a lecturer at the University of Dar es Salaam. All these programs that we have been doing online in the afternoons are in collaboration with other universities. Last time we had the University of KwaZulu Natal, and we have also Pedro Arupe in Zimbabwe, Makerere University in Uganda, Kenyatta University in Kenya, University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, Tangaza University, the Foundation for Religious Sciences in Bologna in Italy, the University of Reggio Emilia, Modena, and Apeldoorn University in the Netherlands. So it's a quite broad consortium, and we have been working together for the last 3 years. And I would like to thank my brother, Dr. Evaristi Magoti, for introducing us to the social, cultural dimensions of African religion. So welcome, Dr.
Thank you, Father Maganya, and very kind for that introduction. My topic this evening.
You may proceed, Dr. Evaristi.
Okay, I don't see the. Okay.
Then 1 hour, 15 minutes, and then after that, there will be interaction with those who are online and those who are on site. So you can start.
Okay, thank you. Welcome all those who are joining us online and those who are present in the auditorium at Tangaza. My task this evening is to use some aspects of African religion, especially the social and the cultural dimensions of African religion. One way of introducing African religion, and especially its social and cultural dimensions, is to address some of the false assumptions that have been leveled against it. For this task, it is important to start with that because it will clear the ground for proper understanding of African religion and its social and cultural dimension. So I will start with the, again, these assumptions are not new. They are available in almost every book on African religion. They can be easily accessed. So what I'm doing is just to reiterate what African scholars have identified and share them with you. One of the oldest assumptions was the idea of rejecting African religion. The idea of rejecting African religion as a religion is not new. It started a long time ago. And it has its origin in the colonial background, actually. Those who came to colonize us, they didn't know who we are, what we were. So they labeled our beliefs and practices as irrational sometimes. So why are they saying that African religion is not a religion? Part of the explanation is that African religion, its practices are random, not organized into specific structures. It has all the hallmark of superstition in that it has no spiritual guides, and that those who practice it are kind of, savages and civilized. But this assumption has been rebuffed because if religion means a commitment to what counts most in people's lives, and if what counts most to people is God, then African religion must be considered as a religion. Another assumption that has been thrown around concerns with its multiplicity. They say it's not one, but there are so many African religions. Again, I'm mentioning this because we may have heard them in the past, but they are present even today. In one of the lectures I presented with students at Lille University, that question was also asked. It is relevant as the last month. So people are asking, why are you speaking of African religion and not African religion? Because the argument behind it is the assumption that there are many African religions and not only one. That is because African culture is so diverse and different that it does not make sense to speak of African religion in the singular. African religion at least in this presentation, I consider to be a legitimate appellation for two main reasons: for logical reasons and the similarity reasons. If we can apply the singular to Christianity and not to Christianity and not Christianities or Islam in the plural, then the same logic must be used to understand African religion. Another reason, the similarity reason, is that there are so many and the fundamentals, and there are so many beliefs and the practices that are so fundamental and common that it is legitimate to use the singular African religion. And those have been identified. The rites Africans perform, the rituals, the veneration of ancestors, and so forth. Again, there is this idea that African religion cannot be a religion because it has no sacred books, no central authority, and it has no missionaries to spread its teachings to other people in the world. That is partly true, but it is true that African religion has no sacred books. Certainly, it has no Bible and there is no Quran. But as most of the eminent scholars have helped us to understand, African religion is written in the history, the hearts, and the experience of people. It is also true that African religion has no central authority, but that is because it is pragmatic and realistic. Its believers, its adherents, just follow it as it has been handed down to them by former generations, doing whatever necessary in order to suit their circumstances. It is also true that, African religion has no missionaries. Again, this, don't know what by missionary, I think it moving from one country to the other, like the former missionaries did. But we don't find that in African religion, because the missionaries in African religion are the family, the community into which one is born. They are the ones who pass on the faith. They are the ones who pass on the practices from one generation to the next. It is often also said that African religion has no founder. And this is related to other world religions. For instance, they say all major religions have their founders. Christianity was founded by Jesus, even though some say Jesus did not find a religion, but at least its followers founded Christianity. In Islam, we have Muhammad, and in Buddhism, which is also one of the world religions, we have Siddhartha Gautama Buddha. So why is it that in African religion there is no founder? Part of the explanation for this is that African religion has a different origin. According to Mbiti, it evolved slowly through many centuries as the people responded to the situations of their life and reflected upon their experience. Religious ideas arose and they took shape in the process of their search for answers to fundamental questions of existence and as ways of making human life better. So it is in the process of humanizing their own living conditions that the religious dimension arose. That is about that's all I can say. But there are many, if you read in BT, I mean, in the introduction to African religion, there are so many. I've just picked up a few for our discussion tonight. The social dimension of African religion. Let me make it clear that although in this presentation, the social and the cultural dimensions are examined separately, in the thoughts of the adherents of African religion, dimensions are inextricably connected, that they cannot exist independently. The only reason we examine them separately here is only because of clarity, to help those who don't understand the African religion to understand it better. So one of the social dimensions concerns itself with the rites of initiation. Rites of initiation or rites of transition are religious events. They include rites performed at birth, at the time of initiation, engagement, marriage, adulthood, elderhood, and death. Why so? Because during such events, prayers are said, sacrifices are offered, and the libations are poured in a petition for blessings or thanksgiving to God. But these are also social events because family members meet to renew their ties and share food, which is a sign of a communion with God, ancestors, one another, and the universe, the environment. Drinking parties, which have now become something else, and seasonal dances, farming, these were communal events, and all had religious connotation. Yeah, actually not connotation, they were deeply religious. It is not only because people are drinking beer or changa that they were deprived of its religious dimension. Magesa informs us that for women, the practice of fetching water, for instance, and collecting firewood was rarely an individual affair, but a social one. Every woman in the village performed these duties at the same time. I was fortunate when I was growing up, I saw this. You know, women had their own specific time to go to fetch water at the wells. And you could see all women were going in the same direction, laughing, dancing, you know, and when at the well, they were enjoying, they were talking, so it was a social thing. Another aspect is moral and ethical order. African religion provides norms that guide behavior and the social relations. The principle of life at the basis of morality in African religion and the principle of Ubuntu, I am because we are examples that come readily to mind. These principles may not be articulated, you know, in the mind, so well articulated in the mind of many ordinary believers. But they are there, they live them. They experience, they are part and parcel of their life. African religion provides principles of justice, honesty, respect, and responsibility, and more could be said in that line. In this religion, the violation of moral norms are believed to disrupt harmony between human beings, ancestors, and the environment. So we see that African religion permeates these aspects of life. We'll come to the cultural dimensions of African religion. Let's take the rites of passage. Religious rituals are always present in major life transitions, such as birth, creation, marriage, and death. And I would say in these rituals, these are the most intense moments where you can really see the religious dimension, the cultural dimension of African religion. These rituals transmit cultural values and the social responsibilities. Oral tradition. Knowledge of African religion is preserved in African myths, proverbs, stories, and folk tales. Oral tradition serves to transmit cultural memory from one generation to the next. And again, there are so many studies. I know people are dedicated to the study of African proverbs. Try to seek the wisdom that is in there and the religious message that they convey. We have also the third aspects, arts, music, and dance. The beliefs and the practices of African religion are often expressed through masks, paintings, music, sculptures, and the dance. Ritual performances connect the visible and the invisible world. Again, it is not difficult to see this, especially when you attend some of the African rituals. You can see that they are not just, artificial events, but there is a sacredness in it. They are performed, or they are understood to be sacred events because they are related to the invisible world, to the ancestors. Cosmology. African religion shapes how reality is understood, including relationships with God, spirits, ancestors, nature, and the human beings. In African religion, life is perceived as an interconnected whole rather than compartmentalized into a secular and a sacred. Again, we have this from Agesa's book, African Spirituality, What is Not Sacred, where the dichotomy between the secular, between the sacred and the profane is rendered irrelevant. Sacred symbols and spaces. In African religion, trees, rivers, mountains, shrines, and ancestral graves have religious significance. I think for many students of African religion, this is obvious. There are so many PhD dissertations, masters that have been written on that aspect of African religiosity. which shows that there is nothing that is not sacred. There is nothing that has no divine in it, some aspects of divinity in it, as long as it came into existence through the power of God. Sacred spaces contribute to cultural identity and a collective memory. I'm surprised when I go home to visit my mother. Before leaving, she has to ask me, did you go to visit the grave of your father? So these days, I don't even dare. That's the first thing I do and the last thing I do before leaving home. So graves are not just a collection of sand, put together, they are sacred places. People go there to pray for their ancestors, for their deceased members of the family. And there are special days, especially within there are special days when people go there to remember the dead. So these are deeply spiritual, deeply religious events. Festivals and the communal celebrations. Festivals in African religion commemorate historical events, agricultural cycles, and the ancestral traditions. They strengthen cultural identity and the solidarity among members of the community. So to bring this together, we can say that the social dimension of African religion is expressed through community life, kinship, morality, leadership, and the social cohesion, while its cultural dimension is manifested in rituals, oral traditions, art, music, cosmology, sacred spaces, and festivals. Together, these dimensions demonstrate that African religion is not a separate sphere of life, but an integral part of the entire social and cultural fabric. Summing up this state of affair of African religion, Mbiti wrote, Africans are notoriously religious, by which he meant that religion permeates all aspects of life, whether social or cultural, and it does not exist as an isolated institution, which is now the temptation these days. So that's my short presentation, my short introduction. Chair, I beg you to stop here and I invite some questions.
African religion. We are ready now to take some questions. Yes.
Hello, Dr. My question is about the religion itself. What's the criteria that we call action, we call group of action a religion? Because you said you described different things about religion in Africa or African religion, but it is far from what we recognize as a religion. And in the definition I even have in my mind. what's your criteria or what's your definition of religion that you characterize African African religion in religion? Thank you.
So what is the criteria to define African religion, right?
And to define African religion as a religion.
African religion as religion. Okay. Let us take 2 or 3 questions more, and then we'll give him time.
There are hundreds of definitions. Can I answer? Hello?
You want to answer one by one?
Okay, maybe if there is another one, then that's fine.
Go.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I understand that talking about African traditional religion, especially during the period of colonialism, which actually described African traditional religion as being fetish. And given the fact that the religion is being criticized for not having a revealed scripture. Now, given the setting of Africa, you find a situation where both Christians and Muslims always go trying to convert those who practice this very religion. So in the light of this, don't you think it is a way of saying that we have actually accepted that this religion is actually not something that is not practicing? Thank you.
So maybe, okay, the last question, we'll take set of questions, 3 questions at a time.
Thank you so much.
The second question is not clear.
Maybe we just write this question 4. It's slightly similar to what I wanted to inquire. Is that since in most cases when you talk about the African traditional religion, people just think of witchcraft. I don't know in your research what you can tell us, because immediately you talk of ATR, people think of this is now a witch, or someone who is going to practice elements to do with that magic and that magic and so forth. And then secondly, related to that, compared to other religions like the Islam, Christianity, and what have you, now coming of age, I've not really met a typical example of people who identify themselves that I am a person practicing ATR. I don't know if you have some example of people who you can say these are groups who practice ATR. Thank you.
Okay, so we can pass those 3 questions.
No, the second and the third are not clear. I think I have a problem with my voice here. The sound is very faint. I can't hear very well. I go to the first question.
Identification of African religion and witchcraft, and he has never met a person who says, I'm a believer in African religion. Have you ever encountered one? Question is about Christianity and Islam. They try to convert people of African religion, meaning that African religion is not worth a religion. And the first question was about the definition and the criteria.
Yeah, the second one was, have I met a person who says is a member of African religion?
He has never met any.
Eh?
Never met anyone who says that is a practitioner of African religion.
Okay. Okay, the other one?
It's about Christianity and Islam trying to convert people of African religion, meaning that it's not worth religion.
Christianity and Islam, they were converting members of African religion.
Not a white religion.
No.
You may go ahead.
Hello? Do you hear me? Yes, let me start with the first one. What criteria would you use to say that African religion is a religion? I think it's a question of definition. There are so many definitions of religion, but the one I have used is the one which says that religion is a commitment to what is important in life. And if we consider God to be a very important being in human life, then we can say African religion is a religion, because Africans have part of the saying of Mbiti that Africans are notorious religion. It highlights the fact that Africans are really committed to God, or to the sacred, if we don't want to use that God. So that is the definition I used in this presentation, is a justification for that. But there is another one which Magesa has used in his book, and he says religion, any religion, is a way of life. And if we consider African religion as a way of life, or life itself, then we have no reason to hesitate calling African religion a religion. Because if you look at it very closely, you soon realize that African religion is the prism through which many Africans understand the world around them and the events. It's not Christianity and Islam which influences Africans' understanding of the world. It is African religion. So again, I don't know whether I make myself clear, but there is another one, which one say, have I met a person who says he practices African religion? My brother, they don't say, they can't say that, because the African religion has been demonized. It is not something you confess publicly. And again, this is because of the background, the colonial background, and the stigma attached to it. People are, most of us Christians and Muslims don't want to identify ourselves with the religions of our culture. And that's because African culture has been demonized, has been undermined. If you say that you remember your adherents of African Christianity, you don't seem modern. You look a bit outdated and, you know, a kind of a person who is not civilized. So most Africans go along with that because, you know, they are ready to say that I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim. But actually, the depth of their Christianity and the Islam is very, it's not deep, you know? And that's why most of the time, and especially when they are in a crisis, they don't go to the priest or to the sheikh. No, they go to traditional healers. They go to the elders. Here in Dar es Salaam, I don't know how it is in Nairobi, when a person gets sick, the first thing they do is to take him back to the village, to the elders. That's where really treatment takes place. So there was a saying, they say, these foreign religions, Christianity and Islam, they don't go very deep in us. And that's why in the morning we're in the church, in the evening we are at the witch doctors. And we do that in secrecy. We don't want people to know that we practice that. And this is not only about, ordinary people. This involves professors and academicians in our universities, It involves the members of parliament, people higher up in government, They have, although in public, they don't want to show that they believe in African practices, but in reality, they do. That is the kind of schizophrenic attitude which exists in again, I don't know, but whether it is because of modernity, we feel more comfortable to identify ourselves in public with modernity, and then in secrecy, we identify ourselves with African tradition. This is hard to say. The third one is about the missionary dimension. It is true that when Christianity arrived, the first thing they did was to proselytize, to convert people from African traditional religion to their religion, to Christianity. And we all know the consequences of that. Whether nowadays people say it is because of evangelization that Africans became Christians, fair enough. But if you consider it only real life, Christianity has very little impact, or even Islam for that matter. It has very little impact in the lives of people. Magesa used to say the controlling sensibilities of the African people, it is their traditional beliefs and practices.
Now, something about the question of the definition. When we start by trying to define African religion, then we are somehow on the wrong foot. Because the idea of if God is the one who matters most, then in African religion, God is not a concept. You define concepts, yeah? So you cannot define African religion. As per Dr. Makuda said, is a way of life. So the idea, the concept of God is more perceived rather than analyzed. Okay? And analysis is more of a Western way of looking at reality. It is lived rather than reflected, and is expressed in very different ways from culture to culture. Yeah, to culture to culture. There is a proverb among the Ashanti of Ghana that you don't show God to the child. When the child is born, knows already God. So if you want to know the religiosity of the African people, then you just look at the way of life. And Dr. Magoti has already shown those circumstances where the African religion is lived and is expressed. Yeah? Is lived and is expressed. So do we have another set of questions? set of questions. Yes.
I would like to find out about the mixture of religions between when people have two religions. Is it because maybe they are looking for practical solutions to their problems and challenges, or they are not satisfied in a certain or particular religion that they are involved in?
Can the question be repeated, please?
So you're talking about people who are practicing two religions at the same time. Is it because they are not satisfied?
Okay.
You mean Africans practice two religions at the same time?
Yes.
Is that the question?
So those who live the mix up Christianity and African religion, is it not because they are not satisfied? Kind of syncretism, more or less. You may go on, Dr. Magoti.
Yes, but this is a big problem. Actually, it is the problem which led Placide Temple to write the book Bantu Philosophy, because one believe in Christianity, they had double religions. They had two religions: the nominal religion, which was the missionary religion,
So let me try to answer that question. Actually, that is really somehow a tragedy when people Desmond Tutu used to talk about schizophrenic, especially Christians. So one leg is African religion, and one leg is in Christianity. One of the reasons is that when Christianity came, really tried to portray African religion in very negative connotation. And to become a Christian, you had to abandon the religion of your ancestors. Okay, and then people embrace Christianity, but people have not embraced Christianity to the full. Okay, they have not embraced Christianity to the full. To the point that now, when people face existential issues, it's not Christianity that is going to give answer to their questions. They go back. But they go back to a religion which is seen as negative. Okay? So they are torn in between. They are torn in between the two. That's why Desmond Tutu used to call about talking about the schizophrenia. So you don't know well the religion of your ancestors, and you are not at home with the new religion, which is Christianity or which is in Islam. Then at the end, people mix up a kind of a syncretic way of life. Go on, Dr.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you have already. I was saying, Placide Temple tried to address that, and they came up with Bantu philosophy. But it's not the only one. More recently, Ali Mazrui, this famous Kenyan philosopher, in his I think it's one of his documentaries, he speaks of triple heritage. He says Africans, they are the only people in the world who have a triple heritage. They have Christianity, they have Islam, and African civilization. And he says that, of course, it breeds the schizophrenia, which my brother Maganya was talking about. But what he says is that these triple heritage, the African combines these three in himself and herself without any contradiction. So he doesn't see any problem going to the church, doesn't see any problem going attending attending prayers in a mosque, or going to a witch doctor. And then for pastoral agents, this is very confusing. You know, what kind of people are these? They should have only one religion. Eh? And then you ask him, but why? Why should people have only one religion? Yeah, but that is the situation of that is our African situation, that we integrate three civilizations in one. This is even worse, even for academicians, those of us who have studied in Europe and aspire to live like Europeans. It's even worse. Because we travel, we integrate these things sometimes without even awareness. It comes almost automatically. And the ordinary people look at us wondering, what kind of people are these? Anyway, I don't know whether that is an answer, but I was building.
Ask a question which is the reality, which is it's a reality. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For me, the reason is that we do not really appreciate much. First of all, our own cultural heritage. Okay, and we abandon quickly our cultural heritage and embrace a religion which is still a foreign religion. When we are faced with certain existential issues, then we tend to go back. So it's a kind of a mixture, so on kind of syncretic life. Okay, another question. Yes.
I know in Kenya we have freedom of worship, right? I know in Kenya we do have freedom of worship, but my question is, does that come with certain restrictions? Because you find mostly when a group of people who believe in the African religion, when they gather and do their stuff, mostly they are being punished or treated in a certain way, especially by the police. They're being intimidated in a different way for being different. So does that right come with other restrictions, or how does it go?
So he's talking about religious freedom, but at the same time, those who practice African religion, they are not so much free because they are restricted.
What does it mean restricted? What does that involve?
They are. Can you explain more about that? Your question.
Okay. What I meant is you find they are being intimidated in certain ways. For example, we recently had we was doing a certain event. It's a cultural thing where they come around. It's a way of, let's say, solving a certain issue culturally in terms of the African religion. But again, you find them being intimidated. Let's say a group of police is sent to kind of punish them or treat them in a certain way because maybe they do not attribute or they do not believe in what they are doing in terms of their culture. So the police invasion, it's one of the ways in which they're being intimidated. But you know others, they have been arrested multiple times. Because you may find, especially those who do the African religion, especially in Kenya, they are being, they seclude themselves related to a certain area because of worship and also meditation. So you find some shrines are also closed down or shut down, or they are saying that they are into cults or something. So does that right of freedom of worship come with a few restrictions? Like we do allow you to practice African religion, but to this extent.
Yeah, I think it's again those prejudices that people may have. They might generally be practicing the religion of their ancestors, but those maybe who are asked to enforce the law, they think that maybe this is a cult that they must be disbanded or they must be restricted and so and so on. But again, is a lack of understanding of what really they are doing. Of course, certain practices can go into cultism, and we have experienced that here in Kenya. Okay, but there are also those who practice genuinely the religion of the ancestors. The issue is how do you differentiate the two and that confusion. But there could be a certain bias towards certain religious practices of a religious community. I don't think that is only against adherence of African religion. We've seen also instances where a grouping of Muslims, yeah, then attributed also to maybe to violent extremism and so on, where they are also profiled by the police. Yeah, maybe yeah. If they think that maybe it's not in line with the law, and so, but there could be certain restrictions and so on. But the religious freedom remains enshrined in the Kenyan constitution. Okay, in the Kenyan constitution. Yeah. Okay, there is a question online. Yeah. Okay. Hey, you postgraduate student, my question is, to what extent have modernization and globalization have affected the role of African traditional religion in shaping social relationship and preserving cultural identity in the contemporary African societies, particularly East African communities? So I see that we have also other specialists in African religion here, like Professor Philomena Mwaura. Anybody also can also answer to the questions. So the question is, to what extent have modernization and globalization have affected the role of African religion in shaping social relationship and preserving cultural identity in the contemporary African societies, particularly East African communities? I start first of all with Dr. Magoti.
Yes, thank you. These are huge questions to answer in one session, but we will try. Modernization, modernity, if you want, has several pillars. And it involves rationality, the use of reason, which gave rise to science and technology, but also democracy. All those are, ideas which arose at that time, at the time of enlightenment. Democracy, rationality, the growth of science and technology, liberalism. Now you can take, I am just mentioning a few here. Explore their impact on African religion, and especially on the relationship, how they are shaping social relationships. For me, I think modernity has transformed African societies from being communitarian to individualism. I think that's one of the damaging effects of modernization, but also globalization, because I think they are the same thing. One is much more technologically based, but the other one. But African religion emphasized, actually, it was emphasized community, togetherness. it encouraged people to work together, to cooperate. You know, as I mentioned in my earlier presentation, community was at the basis of everything. But with the modernity, communities are dying. Bonds, you can start with the family, and families have a lot of problems today because of individualism. Each for himself or herself. There is little care for the others in the family. And that it goes on from the family to the national level. We have very little regard for others. That aspect of community is almost dying, actually, although it is still there. I mean, we still maintain, you know, especially in the rural areas, you know, maintain the aspects of sharing, you know, respect and all that. But by and large, we could say we have become more liberals, more individualistic than the liberals themselves. Damaged not only the institution of the family, but also marriage. Institutional marriage, you know. These days, it is, you know, it is up to the individual to decide who he or she has to marry. Parents are rarely consulted. Members of the clan are rarely consulted. And for some of us who grew up in that milieu where consultation was important, community was important, we were a bit puzzled, you know. And then it's not surprising that marriages do not last. And it should not be surprising that families collapse. Because I'm not saying individualism is the only cause, but it plays a big role. The idea of money, you know, again, all these ideas come from the Enlightenment. You don't do if you are not paid. What happened to the traditional way of helping others without even money, without expecting anything? So it's a tragedy. For me, I think it is a tragedy that modernization and globalization have killed a traditional way of life, communitarian life. Let me leave there and give it to some other people.
Any contribution for those who are online to that question? I think it's a very important question on how modernization and globalization has affected, you know, relationships. Feel free, those who are online. Okay, or maybe let us take another question online.
Maybe I should add about the cultural identity.
Get more questions.
Chair, can I address the question of cultural identity?
Okay, as if we don't have more questions. So thank you very much, Dr. Evaristi Magoti. Maybe if you could conclude, we will conclude this session, and then we shall take a break.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to conclude by thanking all those who have attended, those who have asked the question, and those who have listened to this conversation. I really hope it is helpful to understand the social and the cultural dimensions of African religion. Thank you for listening.
Fine. So We can take a break of half an hour. Those who wish to come back online, we may also, in the second part, just like to link African religion and spirituality. So we take half an hour break, and then we come back. We come back at 4. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Come back at 4.
Okay.
Welcome back. Welcome back. So, welcome back. Our first presenter in the looked at African religion and its social, cultural dimensions. In about 10, 15 to 20 minutes, I would like to look at African religion and spirituality. We cannot dissociate the two, because all this spirituality is also part of African world view. And then we shall take more questions, and we will conclude by 5. Most of those teach African religion, they talk about African world view. So there is a certain way that Africans look at reality. They look at the world, which we can say it's African. Now, there is an author called Busia who in 1955, he tried to define what is the world view. And he says, when we think of a people's world view, we consider their concept of the supernatural, their concept of nature, their concept of man and society, and the way in which these concepts form a system that gives meaning to men's lives and action. I think this is very key. This is very key. It's these concepts form a system that gives meaning to men's lives and action. Actually, one of the functions of religion, it would be also to give meaning to life. Meaning to life. And another one called Asante 1987, he says, the African-centered or Afrocentric worldview is one that is based on African cultural beliefs, practices, and values. So we have beliefs, we have practices, and we have values. And all these form a system that gives meaning to men's lives and actions. Another author called Bridget says, the notion of a worldview refers to the way a particular people or society understands or perceives the world in which it finds itself. It embodies ideas and beliefs of human beings about the origin of the universe, their relations with and obligation to other human beings, as well as the natural elements or ecology and cosmological phenomena. All this is part of a world view. Now, we're talking about syncretism. Yeah. So now, the new convert is poised between two worlds. One is the old tradition and customs of his culture. And again, this is Busia, 1955, and what he says, I think, is still actual today. The new convert means the one who comes from the African worldview and becomes, let's say, a Christian, or in this context, a Christian, but could be also a Muslim and so on. Yeah? So he's posed between two worlds. And Dr. Magoti spoke even about triple heritage. Okay? So here I think about two worlds. One, the old traditions and customs of his culture in which he's trying to leave behind. To leave behind. Yeah. Actually, our forefathers who became Christians, they were told, if you want to become a Christian, abandon the culture and tradition of your ancestors if you want to become a Christian. So, leaving behind that world. And then we have the new beliefs and practices to which is still a stranger. Okay? So, they were introduced to another worldview. Yeah? We could say a Christian worldview, yeah? To which they are a stranger. And then he says the church would help the person better if the church understands the former. So to understand that world of our ancestors, okay? While she speaks with authority about the latter, okay? So we are African Christians, okay? One way of avoiding syncretism, as Father was saying, is really to be familiar with these two words and understand them very, very, very well. Now, and Dr. Magoti alluded to that, this religiosity of the African people was described in very negative and derogative terminology by early explorers and missionaries. But worse is also that we have internalized this negative way of portraying the religion of our ancestors. Yeah, of our ancestors. On Saturday, I was on a burial in the western part of Kenya. Basically, what the pastor was saying now is as if, the body has gone to the world of the spirits. We are going to block all the spirits and so on and so on. Kind of idea with anyway, yeah. I'm sure that you really not understand and appreciate some of the spirituality we are going to talk about later on. Okay, so I mean, to take time to go back to these, animist, polytheist, primitive religion. Dr. Magoti talked about savage, ancestor worship, magic, dynamism, totemism, fetishism. Yeah, somebody also talked about witchcraft and so on. Yeah, negative way of portraying the religion of the African people. So a worldview, which we're talking about the worldview, we're talking about cultural beliefs, cultural practices, and cultural values. The three have to be considered together. Now, from these, we can talk about African spirituality. African spirituality. And here, I would like to quote Patrick Kalilombe, was a missionary of Africa and a bishop in Malawi. Yeah, who defines spirituality as a relationship between human beings and the invisible. Okay, talking about the invisible world. Yeah, so spirituality is a relationship between human beings and the invisible, in as much as a relationship derives from a particular vision of the world. Remember, we talked about worldview, okay? Worldview. This encompasses what? The beliefs, practices, and values. What we talk African or Afrocentric, worldview. Now, this relationship derives with the invisible, derives from a particular vision of the world, and in its turn affects the way we relate to self, we relate to others, and to the universe as a whole. Okay? It's a kind of unitary vision of the world in that relationship to self, to others, and to the universe as a whole. According to Kalilombe, spirituality is shaped by the worldview of people concerned. Yeah. Remember, we are talking about a worldview, and this is the worldview of people concerned. Now, this worldview is a kind of is based on three poles, which are interdependent. And we cannot understand the African without taking all these three poles together. Okay? So you have what we call the world, the cosmos, the environment. Okay? The environment. Okay? Then we have God, the universe of God, and then we have the human being, the human beings. All these three must be in harmonious relationship. Harmonious relationship. If that harmony is broken, then something must be done, something must be repaired. Okay? And that's where now we enter into rituals, rites and so on, even reconciliation and so on, because everything must be kept in harmony, in unity. Okay? So that spirituality, which is the relationship between the human being and the invisible, is based on African cultural belief, cultural practices, and values. Okay? And this now affects the other relationships. Now, what are these beliefs? Okay? What are these beliefs? Ido Bulaji from Nigeria and Jesse Mugambi have listed at least 10 elements of what you can call African religion. 10 elements of African religion. And I'm going to just to mention them among the belief. The first and paramount, the first really is belief in God. Belief in God. Yeah. And Dr. Magoti started by taking just one definition of religion is about what counts most, and that is God. So belief in God. That is the first. Number two, belief in divinities. Belief in divinities. Then belief in spirits. Belief in the ancestors. Okay? And for me, that is the world of the invisible. When we are talking about God, divinity, spirits, and ancestors, we are in the spiritual world. We are in the spiritual world, because it's the world of the invisible. And remember, Kalilome says spirituality is that relationship with the invisible world. And then the rest are but practices, okay? Practices of magic and medicine. We have sacred rites. When Dr. Magoti spoke about the social cultural dimension, he spoke about the rites. Rites of passage and other sacred rites relating to the life of the individuals, okay? The family and the larger community. There are certain practices, this family, that clan, or the larger community. And then we have religious specialists and their functions. We have sacred social and ceremonial laws and prohibitions, what we call taboos, okay? Do this, do not do this, do not do that. And that depends again on each clan and each family. And then the belief in the sacredness of interpersonal and kinship relation, yeah, and morality. So about 10 elements which are really characteristic of African. Yeah, you have a question? Take a mic because we have people online. Yes, come.
My question is about the political God. Is it just one God based on African religion, or no? They have like different gods. And if it is God, can we consider it monotheism also, or no?
Okay. The question is, when Africans believe in God, do they believe in one God, or do they believe in many gods? For those who are on site, when I was talking about monotheism, and I was talking about from an anthropological point of view, when the human being meets God as one. Okay? And that idea said that as a general principle from an anthropological point of view. When the human being meets God as one. Okay? As one. So it's not a belief in a multiplicity of God. It's a belief in God and God the creator. Yeah. And actually we have so many attributes, okay? Names of God. Okay? Okay. And you'll find that in the names. I give you, for instance, my name. I'm called Halera Imana. So when you see Imana at the end of the name, Imana is God. Okay? If you go to Nigeria, Oloafe, Olo, amongst part of Nigerians, that Olo refers to God. Or you see Chi, Chineke, Kenchir, and so on. The Chi referred to God. Or the Chuku, yeah? And so it's only, it's one God. Okay? So, but I will not have time to explain now the hierarchy. Okay? Everything comes from God. And then God delegates somehow his functions to divinities and so on. But belief is a belief in one God. And actually, African scholars have come to demonstrate that African religion is a monotheistic religion. A monotheistic religion is belief in one God. Okay. Of course, polytheism was one of those reasons why they say that Africans do not have a religion, because they believe in many gods. No, it's belief in one God. Yeah, the creator of the universe and so on. Yeah. So I hope I'll not have time to demonstrate now how they are connected to the one God. Yeah, but for the time being, we can just stay there. Okay. I don't know if I have answered your question.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Good. So now all these beliefs, we have taken those 10 beliefs together. Some are theological beliefs, okay, that they refer to relationship, to God. Okay. Others are more of philosophical beliefs. Yeah. When we talk about philosophy, it's also about giving meaning to what we are doing and so on. And others are of ethical belief, because you cannot separate morality from religion. You cannot separate morality from religion. And actually, all these philosophical beliefs and ethical beliefs, they are really informed by the theological beliefs. Okay, any questions so far? Maybe I can take questions online. So I just wanted to compliment with what Dr. Magoti had presented this afternoon. Of course, it will take time to now to go into one by one. Okay, but because we are talking about God, let me just take just one. Believe in a supreme being, and that was just to continue with your question. So the idea of God is the most important concept in African religion. Yes.
Maybe we you bring together that belief in one God and then the issue of witchcraft and even magic, at least to harmonize it so that we can have a better understanding.
So to believe in God and witchcraft and
Magic.
magic. That is how can we bring the two. Witchcraft is an aspect. We are talking about a way of life. We're talking about beliefs. It's just one element among the practices and so on. But we cannot say that witchcraft is African religion. And that's where we make a mistake. Okay? Yeah. Witchcraft is not religion. Witchcraft is not religion. And strictly speaking, when we are talking about religion, we are talking about a relationship with God. Okay? We are talking about relationship with God. Okay? So witchcraft is a practice in a society. Okay? Now, I have an understanding of witchcraft that maybe still has to be proven, and I stand to be corrected by my colleague and my elders in scholarship. Okay, I know that we have some. Okay. My understanding is this: witchcraft is linked with power. Witchcraft is linked with power. Okay, and we, all of us, have power. All of us have power. And that power is natural. It's God given. It's God given. Okay? Power to do good. Okay, power to do good. But we can also misuse that power. We can use the same power to do what? To do evil or to harm someone. Okay? Misuse of power or manipulation of power. Okay? So, magic, and this I say I stand to be corrected, and witchcraft for me is that in the realm of manipulation of power. Okay? Manipulation of power. And in many African societies, when we talk about witchcraft, what is the how do you call witchcraft in your language?
Utsai.
Huh?
Utsai.
Utsai, meaning
Uchawi, what Swahili.
Uchawi. Yeah.
Witchcraft.
Uchawi. Is it positive or is it negative?
It's negative.
Is it?
Negative.
Is negative, okay? I just want to understand to hear your understanding of witchcraft. Mzee,
Yes.
in your language,
Murogi.
Murogi,
Yes.
okay? Murogi, huh? A witch is a Murogi. Murogi, okay? Okay? It is also, is it positive or is it negative? Negative. Uh-huh. Let us hear another language. Uh-huh.
Umulosi.
Umulosi. Umulosi. And that, which language? Bukusu. Yeah, I was in Bukuya land on Saturday. Somebody else? Another language? Nikikuyu? Murogi. In Kigamba? Moi. Yeah? In which another language? Okay? Okay. But listen to me. Okay. It's not all that witchcraft is altogether negative. Because we had also the Dr. Kavivia from Kenyatta University, who presented us about witchcraft. Okay, but generally we also tend to talk about witchcraft in a negative way. Okay, so I don't want to give any moral judgments now because that will be something else. But it's just to say that God has given us power, and we can manipulate that power to use good, to do good, or to do bad. That's where I'll put, witchcraft for the time being. But let us separate witchcraft from. It's not religion. It's not African religion. It's not African religion. Let us put it at the place of practices. You remember we talked about beliefs, practices, and values. So, yeah. Some communities practice more witchcraft than others. Again, stereotypes. Yeah, stereotypes. But let us not confuse, because African religion was denied as a religion because it was associated with witchcraft. So if you want to talk about African religion, let us dissociate the two, even though witchcraft is part and parcel of practices in certain communities and certain societies. Online, if there is anybody who can answer to that question, welcome. Or more questions, those are online.
What's the question? What is the question?
They were saying about linking African religion with witchcraft. Let us dissociate witchcraft and religion, even though witchcraft is a practice, but witchcraft is not African religion. Are we getting you, those who are online? Just the idea of God is the most important concept in African religion. So Africans believe in one God, who is the origin and sustenance of all things. That's John Beatty. So some early anthropologists and missionaries denied that Africans had any idea of God. Okay, and John Beatty really demonstrated in his book the concept of God in Africa, that all African society, without a single exception, have a notion of God. Okay, somebody online? Yes, Professor Magoti.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to it's a kind of remark for those who are asking about African religion being a polytheistic religion. I just wanted to share the idea that sometimes we ask African religions questions which believers do not ask. You know, very rare believers of African religion ask themselves, am I adoring one God or am I adoring many gods? They don't ask that question. This is a question of the Enlightenment where numbers count. But for a believer in African religion, God is God. It's finished. You don't go further. So I agree with what you said, that there is only one God, because we should not ask African religion questions which it does not even ask. Yeah, we take questions from outside and bring it to African religion. That I don't think is. But yes, I agree that there is only one God, and for adherents of African religion, the question does not even rise. Mulungu is Mulungu, Mungu ni Mungu. You don't sit there counting them. So that is one. The other, hello? Hello? Do you hear me? Uh-oh. Hello?
Go on, please, go on.
Yes, on African religion and witchcraft. No, but I think again that is spot on, because we should understand that Africa, witchcraft is an evil. So you cannot associate African religion and witchcraft and treat them the same. The best way to answer this question, because African religion has a way of addressing evil, and the witchcraft being one of them. The fact that it is practiced almost everywhere in Africa does not make it less. It does not make it, does not justify it. But by its very nature, because the witchcraft, it's an attempt to harm, to destroy. It's one of those forces which do not preserve life. They are so it cannot be part of African religion. But the correct way to say is that African religion addresses the question of evil, including witchcraft, including corruption, including theft. That's what I wanted to add, Chair.
Okay, yeah. So, Dr. Magoti, thank you very much. Because I add the audience here, they all said in their languages that witchcraft is negative, because it's Mulozi, Muroki, Muhoi, in different languages and so on. And that's why I was saying that it's really misuse of power to do harm, to do evil. But that still has to be demonstrated, that relationship between power and witchcraft. Okay, and sometimes we use also that, people use that even to protect themselves altogether, to have more power to protect themselves against an enemy or against. But let it be clear that witchcraft is not religion. It's not African religion. Yeah. Religion is about belief and belief in God. Okay? And witchcraft is not a religion. It's not African religion as it used to be associated in the past. Okay. More remarks online.
You said that the God that African religion believe in is the one God.
Yeah.
Yes. And I have two questions connected to each other. The first one is that, is this religion has any prophet? Any prophet come to the earth, not come to the earth, actually sent from the God to preach among people, to invite them into one God? It is one question. The next one is that if we, without prophet, mostly naturally, human intend to actually accept more than one God. For example, a God for the sky, a God for earth, a God for land, a God for rain. The natural intention of humankind is in a way that he wants to accept different gods for different aspects of the world. Maybe these are the servant of a supreme God, I don't know, like Roman gods before Christianity. But natural intention that we see in the history of human, they want to worship something that they see, something like idols, something that That's work with for them. For example, rain. Send rain for them. Send, for example, green plants for them. They intend to accept this kind of God. I mean, the human without prophets, without apostles. What do you say about these two questions?
Yeah, okay, so again here we are in a different world view, okay? Okay. And actually that is from the same basis, that's why early missionaries and anthropologists, they say African religion is not religion. And that's where Dr. Magoti began. There is no book, there is no prophet, there is no this. So it is not a religion. But you see, this is the Western understanding or even influence from the West, that understanding of reality itself. But that is not the way. As I said, African religion is more perceived than analyzed and so on. That's not because that there is no prophet that is not a religion. Actually, some cultures have prophets. If you ask the Kikuyu, they'll talk about Mugwa Kibiru, the prophet. Are together. Yeah, but again, when we are not doing a comparative study of religion, okay? So if you say Christianity has prophets, okay, and you say Islam has prophets altogether, okay? Then you want to compare now with African religion, then say because African religion does not have prophets, then it is not a religion.
I don't want to say that.
I understand your question because it's the same. It's the same. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's not because it does not have prophets per se. Yeah. In understanding of Christianity and Islam, that it does not is not a religion. Yeah. But that's a question that has been always and it keeps on coming and coming and coming. Okay. Yeah. Because God has different ways of speaking to His people. Okay, God has different ways of manifesting and revealing Himself to His people. He reveals Himself through nature. He's revealing Himself through the people that that we meet. He reveals Himself through the events also of the life of and so on and so on. Okay? So it's a larger understanding of how God manifests Himself and guides His people.
Okay, the next question.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to say that African religion is not religion because they don't have prophets. I didn't intend to say that. I said that if they don't have prophet, it is hard to accept they live in just one God. Because as we see in the history, we see that the group of people that do not have prophets, they believe in more than one God. They believe in God, but more than one God. Like Roman, I exemplified. Yes, that was my question. How do you justify one God without any apostle among African people?
I think let me just go back to what I said the other day, and I'm going to repeat that just from the common human experience, what I call an anthropological point of view, okay? When the human being meets God, he meets God as one. That is the basis of monotheism. Nobody worships, meets a multiplicity of God, because God is one. Okay? God is one. That is the common denominator from an anthropological point of view. Now, in practice, you may find now that there are people who are worshipping many gods. Okay, that is a what you call the polytheist altogether. Yeah. But when the human being meets God as one. Okay, and that's what is the basis also for monotheism in Islam, monotheism in Christianity, and monotheism in African religion. Okay, so that is the basic. That's the basis of that. Now, I said I was not going to, but now the second level now in the spiritual world is about belief in divinities. Okay, what we call divinities who are different from God. Okay, now God has delegated some of his functions and his powers altogether. God has delegated some of his functions and his powers to act on his behalf altogether, to act on his behalf. Now, sometimes the mind may not be able to rise above. Okay, I always take the example of the golden calf. You remember the golden calf? Yes. The golden calf. What happened? Moses was on the mountain, right, with God, and then he delayed to come, right, and people became impatient. What did they say? They asked Aaron to do what? To make for them a god to worship. Did it mean that they did not believe in God? They did believe in God, the supreme God. But because of circumstances, they feel that God is absent, God has delayed. Let us not make a God for ourselves. That is polytheism. Okay? Okay? That is polytheism. So you decide to make a God for yourself. Actually, that is even idolatry. That is idolatry. Even when you do that, you know that there is still a supreme, but for your own convenience, you create your own God. And I agree with you, then messengers will be sent by God to say, no, come back to me, to the original God. All together. Yeah, that's anyway, that would be my answer to your
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, in delegating, that there is a God of mountain, there is a God of the skies, there is a God of this, there is a God of that, there is a God of that. Okay? But all these have their authority from the supreme God. Okay? From the supreme God. But anyway, I don't have time to enter into details on how these, belief in God, belief in divinities, belief in spirits, and belief in the ancestors and so on. Yeah, we may. Let's take one or two other questions from people online, and so we shall conclude by 5. Yeah. Any question here? Okay. So how is the knowledge of God expressed? It's expressed in proverbs, short statements, songs, prayers, names, myths, stories, and ceremonies. Okay. Do you have stories of creation? How God created the Kikuyu, how God created the Luya, we have those stories all together. And those stories say something about God. Okay? They say something about God. Even the ceremonies, they are not just mere ceremonies. There is always a religious meaning behind those ceremonies and practices. Okay? So God is real to Africa. Yeah. So in each people and each locality, God has a local name. There's a local name for God. We are talking about Were, Nyasai, Mungu, Nzambe, Ngai, yeah, yeah. And these names are not just mere labels. They describe his nature, the experience of Africans about him, and the belief about him. Yeah. Hallelujah, how do you say? Were, and then there's always something. Were mulo. Huh? I would say God the creator. How do you say God the creator? Hallelujah. Where Hakaba is a God, the provider, Agaba, Agaba, yeah, is the creator, and so on. So those are in our. So God is unique, is incomparable. There is no one, and none to whom you can compare God. This uniqueness implies also that God is transcendent, is a transcendent God. God is the absolute controller of the universe, and the absolute control of all beings is due in African thought to the fact that all other beings exist in consequence of him. Yeah? God is one and the only God of the whole universe. Okay? Good. So what I just wanted to add to what my brother Magoti, Dr. Magoti, presented this morning, also the spiritual aspects of African religion, and you cannot dissociate that with the rest. Okay, so and this is based on cultural beliefs, practices, and values. Okay, and religion is basically spirituality is basically the relationship with the invisible God. So I would like to stop here and then maybe just take one or two questions, and then we close the session for today. Yeah.
So can we say that it's African religion?
Yeah.
Those people who claim that prophets.
Yeah.
For example, we have one in Uganda called the Megatrilian.
The Megatrilian, yeah.
It's a prophet. Was she led by the Holy Spirit of God?
So let us again be clear. Sometimes we use Christian categories, yeah. When we want to talk about when we talk about the Holy Spirit, okay. When we talk about the Holy Spirit, you understand the Holy Spirit as the third person, the Trinity, and so on. Yeah, yeah. Maybe we say that it was led by the Spirit of God, which is much more general and so on. I mean, all the prophets, they always claim that they have been sent by God. Okay, all of them. They say that they are speaking because one again of the role of this prophet is not only that, but to speak in the name of God. Okay, that's why they say, "In the God of man has said this to me." Okay. Yeah, so we believe that that they are also led by the Spirit, by the Spirit of God. But then you have to see also the fruits, what is their lives, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's for sure. Are they really, according to the will of God and so on? But I wouldn't really just, as I said to the other brother, then let us not attribute the same concept we understand prophethood in other religions to apply that, to the African religion. That would be misleading, because the conclusion would be a biased conclusion, because then this African religion is now demeaned. Yeah, it's not because it doesn't have a prophet and so on. Then yeah, but there is more that needs to be done. The study needs to be done in that sense. Yeah. Okay. So allow me now to take this opportunity to thank our colleagues in Dar es Salaam, our partner, the University of Dar es Salaam, and Dr. Magoti for introducing to us this afternoon African religion, social and cultural dimension, and then our colleagues from Kenyatta University. We have Professor Maura with us online, and I believe that we are also our colleagues from Makerere University and Pedro Arupe, University of KwaZulu Natal. We also like to thank those who are following us on YouTube. There are quite a number of them. I think more than 50 are following us directly on YouTube. This was just an introduction and also an invitation to get much more interest in who we are, let's say who we are, because we are first of all Africans, okay? I'm an African Christian. I'm an African Christian. I'm not separating the two, okay? I'm not separating the two. The moment I start separating my Christianity and my Africanity, then I'm in trouble, because then I am torn apart. I'm truly an African and a joyful Christian, okay? Yeah, so let us really, and to live fully our Christian life, we must understand where we come from. Yeah, and this is the religion of our ancestors. Okay, and let us go beyond the negative representation of what we have in scholarship. Okay, from the coming of the missionaries up to today, and let us learn also to have the same attitude of respect and dialogue, yeah, with the adherents of African religion, because most of the time we go with the bias, okay, yeah, and I really encourage to try to understand more. Why are they doing things the way they are doing? You understand me? Why are they doing things the way they are doing? Because behind those rites, behind those ceremonies, there is a religious meaning. We can only see the practice, but we don't see the meaning and the value behind. Can we interrogate and say, tell me please, why do you do what you are doing the way you are doing? And then we'll find that we come to understand each other. So thank you very much, and may God bless you. Thank you very much, our colleagues online and those who are viewing on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Father Innocent. I just want to mention 2 points. First, let's appreciate Father Innocent, because I know, at least I know, that he's so busy, but he sacrifices his time to come be among us and teach us. So thank you, Father Innocent, and I'll clap for it. And from today on, we decided to have one of you participants at the end of the day for wrap up the day. But what is a wrap up? We would like, it's on you. You can decide to explain about one of your classes, to summarize the classes that you had in your day, or I don't know,